Hello everyone, welcome to our next English lesson. Today we are looking at suspense. I'm sure you noticed what I did there, slowly building things up. I'm sure we can do better than that when it comes to the end of our suspense writing. So let's get started. So before we start looking at suspense, a few things we're going to do. The first thing we're going to do is word wars again. So I want you to look at this sentence, which is, the man ran through the tunnel. And I want you to think about how you could improve this sentence. So what information could you add? Could you use a relative clause? So remember what we worked on in the last lesson. How could you include a relative clause in that sentence? And what punctuation could you use? Remember, we've been working on dashes, we've worked on semicolons, we've worked on introducing things with colons, maybe parentheses or brackets. What could you include? So just remember that the main information needs to be that a man is moving through the tunnel, and he's not moving slowly, he's moving fast. So how could you describe that man moving through the tunnel? You can add extra sentences, you could add short sentences to maybe show his reaction. Maybe his heart could be pounding. So what's his emotions? What's his body doing? How's he moving through that tunnel? So that main bit of information still got to be in there, but you can improve it by adding things. So what I'd like you to do is to pause the video for 4 minutes and see how you can improve that sentence. Okay, so if you just let me know either on your submission form or the Word document on the assignment section of Teams, if you write your sentence that you came up with there, or you could just show me with all your work together, or you could write the sentence on Tapestry. It's up to you how you share that with me. Okay, next we're going to look at another piece of vocabulary. So our word today is alleviate. And if you remember from last time, I'm going to give you 3 different meanings. And I would like you to just pause the video once you have the 3 different meanings and just take a minute to decide which one you think is the correct definition of the word alleviate. So the first possible definition we have for this word is a scientific mixture that makes reactions occur quicker. The example sentence we have here is, the reaction occurred almost instantly after the scientist added alleviate to the mix. Our second possible definition is the act of levitating. And our example sentence is, after only a small dose of pixie dust, Peter Pan was able to alleviate out the window. And then our third and final possible definition is to make less severe. And the example sentence is, the man's pain was alleviated after he took some painkillers. So once again, I'm going to ask you to just pause the video and decide if you think alleviate means, or alleviate is in this case, a scientific mixture that makes reactions occur quicker, or it is the act of levitating, so hovering off the floor, or it is making something less severe or less extreme. So is it A, B, or C? So pause the video, have a think, and then start playing the video again to see if you got it right. So hopefully you've decided whether you think it's A, B, or C. And I can tell you that alleviate means to make less severe. So the sentence there that was correct with the correct definition was, the man's pain was alleviated after he took some painkillers. Okay, let's move on to starting to think about suspense writing. So what I would like you to do now is just pause the video when I give you instructions for 60 seconds and think about what is suspense and Why is it used? You might also think about how you can achieve writing suspense. What sort of things would you do when you are trying to write a piece of suspense? So pause the video, have a think about that, see what you come up with. Okay, so suspense is the unknown. You build it by not revealing all of the information, and it fosters, so builds, a desire from the reader to know more. So you set your scene, you set loads of things up that the reader does not know what is going on, they don't know what's going to happen, and you've built that up. And there's a number of different ways that you can do that. We're going to work on that for the rest of the week, with the aim of you writing a little bit of suspense when we come to Friday's lesson. So to start thinking about suspense, I would like you to watch this short film called Road's End. And this is free to access. So if you follow the link, I'll also put the link in Teams and on Tapestry so that you can just click on it and follow it. And then when you watch the film, I would like you to think about a number of things. This is one of my favourite films, if not my favourite films, when thinking about suspense. It's absolutely fantastic. So have a watch of it, and whilst you're watching it, have a think about these things. What do they or don't they tell you? So watch the video. I'd advise you to watch it at least 2 or 3 times and maybe write down what are all the things they do or don't tell you. What questions does it make you think of? So if there's something you don't know, you're going to have a question, so write it down. So if there's something you can't see, what question do you have about that? If there's something you're not told, what question do you have about that? And then just write down any emotions that this film makes you feel. So follow the link, have a watch of the film at least 2 or 3 times. You can watch it more if you want to, and have a think about those questions. Okay, so I made a list when I was watching it, and this is what I came up with. So we do not know what they look like. When we try to create a thought in our head about what people are like, we want to know what they look like so we can gain a better understanding. And what we also find out by knowing what they look like and being able to see their facial expressions, which we cannot do in this film because their face is covered. We know from their facial expressions usually what their emotions are, and we can tell how they're feeling. So if they're smiling, they're probably happy and they're probably in a good mood, and they're pleased to see us, and they're not up to anything unless they're being particularly tricky. So we don't know what they look like. We are unable to see their facial expressions. We don't know what happened because at the beginning of the film we just see a person trying to get a lift. We do not know how they ended up in that situation, and they do not explain it at all in the film. We're just left with our imagination to figure that out. We don't know where they want to go, but they've put their thumb out, they've got in the car. We don't know where they're trying to get to. We never hear them speak. So that creates a lot of suspense because once again, you don't know anything about that person. You can't see them, and then they're not telling you anything. You don't know what they sound like. You don't know what their name is. You don't know what they're interested in. You don't know where they've come from. So many things you don't know. And then another thing, why do they look at their watch? So those are the 6 things I noted down when I was watching it, and I'm sure you noted a lot of other things. So how do they create suspense? They've included loads and loads of things that the reader, or the watcher in this case, has questions about, and that builds the suspense in people's minds because they're trying to figure out the answers to all those different things. So suspense is all about the unknown. So it's show, don't tell. When you write your suspenseful writing this week, keep that in mind. So you also notice that they're making you think about the 5 senses. When you're writing your suspense, you're going to be thinking about these and how you can get the reader to start using those and wondering about them. So we've got taste, which is Something we don't tend to include in our writing too much. We've got feels, so how they touch things. You might also start thinking about an emotion there. What they can hear, what they can smell, and what they can see. So ones we tend to concentrate on are sight and sound. Okay, so I'm going to give you an example which I will read out in a minute. And we've done this many, many times before, where I give you an example of a text type and you have to read through it and highlight things which you think are features of that text. So for example, if we were looking at a newspaper article, you might notice that it's written in past tense and that it is in columns, that it includes dates, that it includes what happened, who was involved, where it was, when it was, etc. So just things like that, but for suspense, what makes it a piece of suspenseful writing? And I want you to think about punctuation, sentence types, and show, don't tell. So highlight and make notes on anything you think adds mystery or suspense to the example. So I'm just going to read out the example and then I'm going to tell you the sort of things that I found, and maybe you can use that to help you find those in the text as well. I'm just going to get the text up for me. I'm going to read it out to you. So this is my example piece of suspense writing, where you are looking for ways that the author has included suspense. The moon was a strange kind of brightness. An unnatural light hung in the clouds. Grey clouds stretched across the sky. The large derelict house loomed over her. Sarah felt threatened. At that moment, she realised she was alone. For the first time ever, no friends, no family were there to tell her it was going to be okay. There she stood, staring into the ground that just opened up before her like a sinkhole to hell. All was quiet. All was still. Sarah took baby steps closer, being careful not to lose her sure footing. Shuffling as close as she dared to, she peered cautiously into the hole. All was black. The abyss that she faced appeared bottomless. She shuddered as she thought about the depth of the darkness. As Sarah stared into the hole astonished, she felt woozy and dizzy. It was that feeling people get to the edge of a really tall building. It made her feel uneasy and frightened. However, this is not what Sarah should have feared just then. At that moment, Sarah would have felt much more uneasy and frightened if she had realised what was lingering beneath and staring back at her. All of a sudden, she saw something move. She froze. What could it be? She wanted to run, but something compelled her to stay, to lean closer and closer and closer. It happened instantaneously. She couldn't have stopped it from happening if she tried. First her left foot, then her right, slipped forwards, and she lost her balance. She plummeted. Inexplicably, she landed on something soft. She breathed a sigh of relief. Where am I? She thought. Then she saw them, in the shadows, getting nearer. A pair of piercing, bloodshot eyes. Okay, so that's the example, and as I said, I'll put up a copy of that so that you can have a look through and see what you can spot in that text that builds suspense. See if you can notice things about tense, perspective, punctuation, types of writing, maybe any types of punctuation that they've used. Once you have done that, you watch the last bit of the video, which is me just going through the sort of things I've spotted. And what I do, if you've been through the text and highlighted the sort of things you can see, then you have a watch of what I've found and see if you can find those things as well. So let's just click through and see the sort of things that I've found. So I've already told you all that, so I'm going to skip straight to the next slide. So the key features that I noticed whilst I was going through the text was that they used short, sharp sentences. They used the type of punctuation ellipses, so 3 dots. So that's to show you that some information is missing. Ellipses is not always just punctuation though. An ellipses is also just anywhere where they've not told you something. So anywhere where they've built that suspense by not telling you something is also a type of ellipses. They've used paragraphs because it's continuous prose. They have used a variety of punctuation. There's a variety of different sentences. They've used the same tense throughout. I've said that they've used sophisticated vocabulary, so that means they've used some really powerful words in it. They haven't just stopped at the word big, for example. They've gone on to use maybe gargantuan. They've used repetition, so when we get closer and closer and closer, so using repetition to build that suspense. They have used the senses to describe the place. They've also used rhetorical questions. So Sarah in that story is asking herself questions. So if you have already been through and noted down some things they built suspense with, perhaps you can now just have a quick look at my list again and then go through the text again to see if you can spot anything else that builds suspense in that text. So that is your activity for today's lesson, and the idea of that is just so you have a better understanding of how suspense works, so we can start building on that for the next couple of days before we write our own piece of suspense on Friday. Good luck with that. I'm really looking forward to seeing what you come up with for your ideas for the features of suspenseful writing.